Hello, my name is Michal and welcome to the Golden Blue Spiral, the gateway to the beauties of the unity consciousness and unconditional love. Today, I would like to talk about some basics of the cosmic cycles and the brand new paradigm that we have stepped into very recently. I hope that by the end of this video, it should be a little bit more clearer to you what these cycles are about, that the conditions that we are in are nowhere close to where we were before, and that we don't need to play the new game by the same old rules that were applicable like thousands of years ago. So let's dive right in. Let me begin with the long count calendar, which is the ancient but very accurate calendar which was used primarily by the Aztecs or Mayans, even though it wasn't necessarily created by them. And the interesting thing about that one is that it was ending in 2012. Now, let's see why. You might be already familiar with the regular cycles like day or lunar month or a year. However, there are also bigger cycles in play, and one of them, and that is the most relevant at this time, is called the precession of the equinox. It is a cycle that takes approximately 26,000 years, even though you can see different kinds of materials which will state that it can be 25,000, 24,000, depending on whom you read. However, for example, NASA currently is also closer to the 26,000 years version. So let's stick with that one for now, even though the number doesn't really matter, at least to me. For me, the ideas and the concepts are what matters. And now the precision for me is not that important at this time. So what is the precession of the equinox? It is the wobble of the Earth axis, just like you can see in the picture. And as the axis moves throughout these circles, it also moves from one constellation of the zodiac sign to another. And you can, for example, see that right now, the axis points to the Polaris, which we call also the North Star, but it wasn't always like that, because if you see on the other side, let's say about 13,000 years ago, the axis would point to Vega, which you can see over here. And also notice where we are at about. So right now, for those who follow astrology, we stepped into the age of Aquarius, and this is very new for us because I think that we stepped into it like earlier this year, in the beginning of this year, or maybe the end of the last year. I'm not sure about that one perfectly, but that already is a huge thing. But I will leave that topic for astrologers because astrology is not my thing really. Know what you don't know is also one of your biggest strengths. So, guess what happened on December 21st, 2012? Yes, it was not the end of the world. As you can see, we are still here, but then you can see that there was this precession of the equinox, a huge cycle coming to an end, converging to 2012 point, and a new one began. And that's where we are right now. But first, let's think about it for a moment also, because how could the Mayans know about a cycle which is about 26,000 years long? That is tricky even for us, given the lifespan of human. And they also didn't have any technology, and they were supposed to be like dumb pagans and barbarians with no education. So like, how is it possible? How did they know? And this question is even more interesting if we consider that the records of the 26,000 year cycle is present in literature and the ancient cultures all over the world, whether it's Sumerians, Tibetans, Indians, Egyptians, Mayan, Aztecs, Incas, or any native tribes. It doesn't matter. They all know about this, and for a long time. And one specific artifact I think deserves also a specific mention, which is called the Emerald Tablets. According to some, the claimed age of this artifact is about 36,000 years, and it was supposedly to be associated with Atlantis, and original is now hidden from public. There are some rumors that there is some brotherhood that is taking care of it and protecting it from it falling into wrong hands. However, for me, again, it doesn't matter that much because we have translations of it. There were many people who have studied this material, including Isaac Newton. He studied it a lot as well. But for us, for our modern society, the most comprehensive translation was done by Doriel. However, even that is still using quite ancient English language. So if you don't want to use half of your brain power just to understand what this English word and sentence means, maybe you can also read the modern English translation by Jordan David River, who is the author and creator of the Spirit Science, if you are familiar with that channel. If you are not, I highly recommend. It's one of the good sources, which also combines many sources together in a very nice animated way, which is quite easily digestible also for children. Now, astronomical cycles directly impact the human consciousness, and we are already fairly familiar with, for example, moon cycle. Because when there is new moon, we feel calm and relaxed, whereas when there is full moon, people tend to be restless. Even the police officers have their own statistics that on full moon there is more crime statistically. And then we have also our regular day and night, when during the day we are fully awake and conscious, but then when we fall asleep at night, we basically become unconscious and we don't know what we are doing, most of us, unless you are already very skilled in lucid dreaming. Now, let's talk a little bit more about the day cycle. So this would be like the 24-hour cycle, and you are sleeping at night, then you start awakening, then you are getting ready for your day, and then you are fully active, and eventually you are getting tired, falling asleep and sleeping again. Now, how long does it take you to wake up in the morning? Like 10 seconds, maybe? It depends, of course. Some people shorter, some people longer. But also notice the difference between our consciousness during sleep period and the fully awake period. When you are awake, you have completely different options than when you are sleeping. You could be maybe sleepwalking, but usually when you are sleeping, you cannot move. Now, the precession of the equinox was believed to be a long-term version of the day and night cycle, but for the global consciousness. And let's talk about this on this diagram of the Hindu yugas. So this circle that you can see over here would be kind of the circle that the axis of the Earth circulates. You can see that there is the center of the galaxy, and this would be the point where the axis points towards the galaxy center, and this would be like away from it. In the first half of the cycle, we are basically falling asleep or descending in consciousness as the axis moves away, slowly away from the center of the galaxy. And it is also believed to be the male cycle, when the males take the lead and protect us as we go through the period of the darkness. And of course, our consciousness level drops significantly during this time. You can see that there are some yugas, and that there is this Bronze Age, which would be equivalent for falling asleep. And then there is this Iron Age in the Kali Yuga, which would be equivalent to sleep and deep slumber. And then we have also the second part of the cycle, which would be the awakening. Again, Bronze Age, Dwarpa Yuga awakening. Then the axis would start moving closer to the center of the galaxy. You would get ready for the day, and then we would have our golden age when we are fully conscious, fully awake, and fully aware of all our capabilities. All right, so if you now remember the day, how long did it take you to wake up? About 10 seconds. If you calculate it to about 26,000 years and make the association with that, you will figure out that 10 seconds would correspond to about 3 years. And guess where we are right now? We are right here. We are right in the time of awakening. So, if this is true, and everything suggests that it is true, then we have exciting changes, because guess where we were? We were in deep slumber. And for example, in here, this is about 2,000 years ago, when Jesus or Yeshua was active, right? So no wonder that there was so much rejection to his teachings. And even though he was showing to people what's possible, they just couldn't understand it because they were just sleeping. But now we are awakening, and also notice that as it works at night for you, just imagine the things that you are capable of once you are awake, once you wake up, once you become conscious. So all the things that we thought, oh, it doesn't work, it was never done before. I mean, never done before, this is like our history. Our officially approved history would be like, I don't know, 6,000-7,000 years. But we will remember much more. I can guarantee you that. The recorded history will change. So yeah, right now we are in this period when we are awakening, because everybody needs slightly different time. Some people awaken sooner, some people awaken later. It doesn't matter, it's not a race, and it's all well. So that's where we are. And one very important note to mention in here is that the awakening cycle is associated with the feminine energy. So you can totally see that the feminine energy is coming back to its power. You can see more and more women stepping up and taking on leadership roles. And you will also see that the motherly love and compassion will play a huge role in the future and the healing of the planet. Now, I want to speak a little bit more about the cycles, evolution, and how balance is key to all of that. If you imagine your right and left leg, and how would you like to be in balance? One way is to stay still on both feet at the same time. And of course you would be in balance, but there would be no change, there would be no evolution, no improvement, no progress, and therefore no life. So the universe has figured out a better way how to stay in balance, and that's changing the planet's orbit in circles around the sun. However, in the universe, everything is moving, including the galaxy. The galaxy is also spinning, and therefore the more accurate representation would be something like this. Even the planets move in spirals, and even the sun moves in spiral, because our galaxy also is moving compared to the rest of the universe. Everything is in motion. So one key thing to realize is that the cycles are not loops but spirals, and every time when you repeat a cycle, you are no longer at the place where you were before, you are somewhere else. So it is basically impossible to repeat the same pattern over and over. You are wiser, you are more experienced, and therefore you can look at it from a different position. One note about the female and male, because I mentioned that half of the cycle was male and half of the cycle was female, where basically males are leading us through the darkness age, and the females are stepping back into the light and take over and lead us to the awakening. However, I want to emphasize that this doesn't mean that one is better than the other, or vice versa. And I also don't mean that female equals woman or male equals man. That's not what I mean, because everything in the universe is in Trinity. There is always the duality and the neutral point. There's left, right, middle, proton, electron, neutron, etc. So the male and female, they are not equal, however, they are equally important, and it's all about the balance. There are many more cycles that are in play, especially, the astrological cycles of the planets. I don't want to go into that part because that is not my field of expertise, at least not yet. However, I want to mention also the magnetic pole shift. Now, what is that? You are familiar with the magnetic poles, like north and south. That's how compass works. And that we have something like this energy field around our Earth. The magnetic field is also what causes the northern lights, what protects us from the radiation as well of the sun, and many other things. There is one specific cycle, and that is that it tends to shift. It doesn't stay always the same. So for example, right now we have north somewhere above Arctic, but it hasn't always been like that. There were times when the North Magnetic Pole was in Hawaii and it was moving across the globe. And the way how we know is that when they were exploring the lava, the lava is liquid when it's hot, but it also contains the particles of iron. So when the iron is in the lava, thanks to the magnetic field, it orients itself towards the north. But once the lava hardens, it stays fixed in that position. And then eventually another layer and another layer of lava comes in, and every new layer can show you exactly where the magnetic pole was at that time. So for example, this is confirmed even by NASA. And they are saying that Earth has settled in the last 20 million years into a pattern of a pole reversal about every 200,000 to 300,000 years. And it has been more than twice that long since the last reversal. So there is a high chance that we would experience a pole shift in the near future, because it was supposed to happen already a long time ago. And that would have a huge impact as well, because the magnetism of the Earth is also connected to consciousness and to our memory and how we think. And it is already happening. Even what we could measure, let's say during the last 100 years, that the magnetic pole has been moving. First it was about like a small portion by 20 years, then it moved another 20 years over here, and now it took 10 years to jump almost like 3 times longer. Now it's somewhere over here. And basically what has happened now is that it for the first time crossed the border of the Western Hemisphere to the Eastern Hemisphere. And for the Earth, it works very similarly as our brain. You have like left brain and right brain, where the left brain is more responsible for the logic and analytical thinking, and the right brain is more focused on the art and magic and beauty and music and those kinds of things. And because we are all aligned with the Earth, we live on Earth, we are dependent on Earth, we are part of the Earth, our consciousness is also directly in correlation with the consciousness of the Earth, and the magnetism also impacts our own electromagnetic field, our own toroidal field. So when the Earth kind of shifts the focus from one hemisphere to another, then we can expect something like that to happen for us as well. You can also see some other proofs, like the animals that depend on the magnetism to be a certain way suddenly seem to be confused. The whales get beached. There is more to that, but the magnetism is definitely one factor in that. And also we can expect that if something like that happens, that the poles would suddenly shift dramatically, then it would be a little bit chaotic for some time, because even our airplanes depend on magnetism a lot. Our entire system of navigation depends on the magnetism as well. So I'm just saying that. Just don't be surprised if something like that happens. This brings us to awakening. What is actually awakening? Because I mentioned that we would be awakening in consciousness globally and long term as part of the yugas. So let's dive into it. It's that you start remembering who you truly are. And what that means is that you are not just physical body, but also a powerful, multidimensional being. And that you are also the only creator of your experience. Of course, there is also elements of co-creation, but we will talk about that one in a different video. You also become aware of your connection to the rest of the universe and all life. That's kind of the statement, the all is one and one is all. The fractality of the universe, the holographic nature of the universe. And this connection includes also humans, and it doesn't matter coherent or incoherent, you will just feel them all. Also animals, trees, plants, even minerals like crystals. The entire Earth is a sentient being. And of course, even other beings like extraterrestrials, ascended masters, nature spirits, elementals, whatever. We will just become aware of all of that, and we will be able to communicate with that. We also start seeing the bigger picture, and we will get clarity and reason, and we will suddenly see why certain things happen the way that they happen, and it will start making sense, whereas before it was like no sense whatsoever. Why is this happening? This is like bullshit, and like we were identifying with the victim mode a lot. But now we will see that how all these things happen, and it will be easier for us to also work with that. It's kind of like if you get a map to a place where you've never been, and suddenly, oh yeah, okay, so this is how I navigate, this is how things operate here. So we will be able to spot the patterns and the root causes instead of focusing on the symptoms. You will be able to see behind those symptoms and what are the root causes for them. And also, you will be able to see everything that was hidden before. And that also includes both coherent and incoherent things as well. We also stop living based on fear, and we will stop identifying with the victim mode, and we will stop making excuses why things can't work for us, because we will step into our own power as conscious creators of our reality and co-creators of the global consciousness reality as well. And we will replace the fear by love and gratitude and compassion, and we will enjoy the life. Also, you will start having more kind of the weird shit kinds of experience. I just use this expression because I hear it a lot. Once you start tapping into the other dimensions, of course your brain doesn't understand it, because for thousands of years we were used only to physical reality, and suddenly you are accessing these other dimensions where things are different, where it works differently, when it doesn't have to make sense, where the logic is different. There is logic in the higher dimensions as well, but it is different than the logic in the 3D only. And of course, it will require much more self-care. So things like ascension symptoms are totally normal, you know. We will probably create another video just on that topic, because there's like, people don't know what's wrong with them. Suddenly they are experiencing like headaches and they cannot sleep and they're buzzing, they have like whistling in their ears, all kinds of weird things, and they don't have any explanation for that. So that's one of the symptoms, and we need to learn how to work with those as well. But generally it's also because before the energy was stuck, we had blockages in our energy field, and when the energy starts moving, then of course you can feel it. And it will also bring in much more emotions, because one of the hugest blockages we have in our society in general is how much we are afraid of expressing emotions in a healthy way. You know, soldiers have this belief that any emotions are weakness, compassion is weakness, empathy is weakness, and men are programmed that way. You know, men don't cry, things like that. And women, they have different things, like for example that you know, crying is like a manipulation. I think that you get the point. Also, you will stop seeing things as good or bad. That's because, again, you will see the bigger picture, the bigger perspective, and the polarity, survival and tribal consciousness will be kind of stepping away and be replaced by the unity consciousness. Now I want to emphasize, unity is not the same thing as sameness, because unity actually honors all the diversity as equally important, whereas sameness is kind of defying it all. Now let me share with you this quote by Bashar from the transmission The 5 Forms of Abundance, which is, by the way, a beautiful transmission about how you can unlock from the idea of money being the only way how you can get what you want. But here's the quote: "There is in your story, in your lore, this idea of something being special about 144,000. It gets interpreted in a number of different ways that are misunderstood, but that's the balance point vibration. That's the central, neutral vibration, because below that is possibly more in the negative direction. Above that is more probably in the positive direction. 144,000 cycles per second is more in the neutral balance point. Now, not saying you are negative if you are below that, I'm just saying that most people on your planet actually operate somewhere around 40 to 50,000 cycles per second. They are basically sleepwalking." So from their point of view, what they are saying is that most of our humanity is still sleeping. And that's basically when you remember that that cycle of the yugas that I showed you before, that's basically how it works. It's not that it would be bad, it was just that part of the cycle. We were supposed to be sleeping and taking, you know, the refreshing breaths so we can start a new day. Intergalactic day. 26,000 years old day. And now this brings us to the new paradigm. Because in this new paradigm, we won't be sleepwalking anymore. And we will have completely new rules of the game. Now, what I mean by the game and by the rules, let's take a look by Toad's analogy, as channeled by Daniel Rama Hoffman to me. And he said, the context is key. When you played soccer for several thousands of years and suddenly you need to play basketball, it doesn't work very well when you try to play the basketball by the rules that were applicable to soccer. Before, you couldn't catch a ball into your hands without a penalty, and now you are actually asked to do so. So this is important to realize, because there is a lot of people already in the spiritual field, you know, a lot of shamans, a lot of healers, and most of us learned our ways from our ancestors. And it is super important to honor our ancestors. That's how nature works as well. That's how Fibonacci sequence works as well. That you recognize where you were, where you are, put them together, and that immediately tells you where to go next. But we also need to honor the cycles of the earth, and that what was applicable for them is not what is applicable for us. The context has changed. We are now in a different time. We are now in different conditions. And if they were sleeping, and that's the best they could do given their conditions of sleeping, or as Bashar was saying, sleepwalking, for us, we have completely different set of rules coming up. So this will also be important information to realize when it comes to the idea of protection, because as you are aware, even during your regular day, when you are sleeping, you are much more susceptible to any attacks from predators. But when you are awake, it is much easier to spot them, to avoid them, to somehow deal with them in a conscious way rather than automatic protection, hiding. I don't want to be seen. So the new paradigm, let's take a look at the key differences that we can expect. So the survival consciousness will be replaced by the unity consciousness, and the survival worked well for them, right? Because they were sleeping and they needed to stay alive. But for us, we will have totally different levels of perception, and we will spot the danger. We will see that it is not even a danger. We will be responsible for our creation right away. And we will be constantly, consciously manifesting what we need rather than running on an autopilot, sort of. Instead of being motivated by fear, we will be motivated by passion and excitement. Instead of living based on subconscious patterns, and again, the autopilot, the sleepwalking, we will become conscious. We will know what we do and why, what motivates our actions, what we want to achieve, what are our goals. We will be less reacting and much more consciously choosing and consciously acting. And the old paradigm, again, because we were not really conscious what we are doing, and it was connected a lot to the struggle and pain and suffering, this will be replaced by the challenge, joy, and love, because once you know that you are in charge of your life, then why would you choose that if you can choose something more positive? And therefore, all the victim mode and lack of power will be replaced by us being responsible for our creations, for our actions and how we navigate through the life, because we will suddenly see the map. It will no longer be just random wandering across the seas that nobody ever has gone through. Right now, we will basically see much better where we are going and where we are coming from. Also, the central control system will be replaced by more like distributed system, where we will be empowering individuals rather than trying to control them so that you cannot screw up anything. We will focus more on education and on empowering them. Like, this is everything you can do, and now just work with that. Instead of trying to be all the same, we will honor the diversity. We will leverage the diversity of all of us, of all our perspectives, our opinions, our species, whatever. All of that is good, because the more perspective you can see, the more options available you have. If everybody was focusing on one part of the research, we wouldn't go too far, We need diversity. And while we were focused on the fear before, we will be now trusting more, because you will know how things work. So therefore, it will be easier for you to trust yourself, that you can navigate through it gracefully. When you trust yourself more, it will be also easier to trust the universe, that it is supporting you, because you will again see how exactly it works. And you will be connected to the source. You will be connected to other parts of the system as well. And it will be very obvious for us to perceive it that way. And also, if you trust more yourself and the universe, it will be way easier to trust also others, that they can handle themselves as well. Therefore, you don't have to have them under control, and you know that whatever works for you, or that works for them as well. I mean, they will have their individual lessons and their individual challenges, but that's their path, that's their choices, and you will trust them automatically that they can handle it, just like you can handle it. And while the old paradigm was based on the physical reality only, a lot of people were very ignorant about anything spiritual or anything energy, especially lately. Now we will become multidimensional beings, literally. You will become aware of the energy, you will feel it, you will live it, and it will become part of your life. And in general, if you imagine like the puzzle pieces, the jigsaw puzzle, the survival consciousness paradigm would be something like, as the source separates more and more to explore the duality, explore the separation as deep as it can go, and then that's kind of the exhale part of it, and then inhale as it goes back and puts it all together. So you again kind of zoom out and get the bigger picture, and you start seeing how everything fits together again. So that's kind of the theme of the new paradigm, that you start seeing all the pieces and how they fit nicely into and form a beautiful picture, where before you would just look at this one piece and, okay, what does this do? All right. So now, if you followed one of my previous videos, I said that one of the self-sabotaging beliefs that is not universally true, I mean universally for everybody, for all of the options, all of the timelines, is because something didn't happen in the past, it means that it cannot happen in the future as well. And it doesn't mean that if it 6,000 times before didn't work, that it cannot work. That's not how it works. Because if you remember, it is a spiral, it's not a loop. And every time you try something, you learn something as well. If nothing else, you learn what isn't working. And there was, I don't know who said that, if Edison or Tesla, or there was one quote which was saying, I didn't fail 1,000 times. I found 1,000 ways that will just not work. And then eventually he found a way that works, and I think it was Edison, and then he just figured out the light bulb. So sometimes you just need to zoom out a little bit to see that the loop is in fact a spiral, and that the conditions are simply not the same anymore. And this applies especially right now when we are in the different yuga, and when we are in a completely different age, and we are awakening. So that was all for today. And again, I hope that you liked it. And if you would like me to create more videos like that for free, feel free to support me or not. All is well. And I hope that I was able today to show you that there definitely is hope for the future, and that in fact we have very exciting changes ahead. We only need to give ourselves time to really allow ourselves to go through these natural cycles spontaneously without much resistance, to work on the healing, letting go of all these blockages, because we have accumulated a lot of blocks and belief systems from those times where things just didn't work just because we were sleeping, and suddenly when things become available, we don't really see them as options. But if we just allow ourselves to see that, to give that a chance, then we will realize that we are really not just a small little helpless piece of shit as we were taught to believe, but we were really creators from the beginning, and we can totally leverage that to our advantage. Now, in the next episode, I would like to look into the space-time and the parallel realities as it was shared to us by the extraterrestrials, because, you know, they can time travel, they can teleport, so they have pretty good understanding how this works. So stay tuned for that and see you next time. I wish you a very beautiful day. Bye bye.